Hello everyone, this is Dr. Shijun Wang from Baylor University. Today I am going to continue working on the Beethoven Sonata, the F minor Appassionata first movement. In the previous videos, we talked about the background of the piece, we talked about all the technical difficulties and all the rhythmic intensities of the beginning. I spent about 40 minutes on the first 30 measures. So today I'm going to continue from measure 35. Just to recap a little from last video, we talked about how this very unique time signature of 12/8, yeah, so 12 beats. But of course, we're not counting 12 beats, we're counting in 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a duple meter, but each beat there's 3 little eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in it. And because of the nature of this, we have to be extra careful on how long are the ending chords. For instance, in measure 33 and 34, the right hand has exactly 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So in this case, it's more of a settling down. In comparison to a measure before that, measure 32, you have only 2 beats. So not 1, but then 1 only 2/3 of a beat, and then 1. Yeah, and in a way, it prepares a transition from a very nervous repeated eighth notes to a second theme, which is, when Beethoven wrote it, he must have thought, well, I should do as contrast of a second movement, as of a second theme as possible. So this is dolce, it's very lyrical, and it's really one of the few long melodies that is memorable. You can really hymn the theme of the second theme of the sonata. But of course, when we analyze this, it's really nothing but a broken chord or a arpeggio. Yeah, only 2 chords, but then it's a very lyrical melody. And here, left hand, it changes from this repeated. I would argue this is still repeated, but of course it's an octave, but Beethoven hides this sharpness of this rhythm by first of all making this into a legato, and also instead of hearing the head of each larger beat, we can hear not. So it alternates from a low A flat to a higher A flat to a lower A flat. Yeah. So because of this alternation, we don't really pay attention to it. It's not everyone is so obvious, but it's a very genius way to blend this in. And a couple of things we have to talk about in terms of this right hand very singing second theme. First of all, when I was judging competitions or hearing auditions, very often I would hear younger pianists playing with the emphasis on the longer note. Yeah. Why is that? Because it's easy. Because to prepare the shorter note, which is the E flat, and then the A flat, and then the G natural. You would need to have this technique of holding one note while preparing for the next note. Okay, we can't, as pianists, we can't always finish the previous completely and then start the preparation of the next note. Because we play so many notes and they're so fast, we simply do not have the time to do so. The quality of that notes after the long note would be so poor if we do not prepare them way ahead of time. So we have to do this. Yeah, and I even sometimes have to release the lower note. Because an octave, there's the lower note, there's the top note. I have to release a tiny bit early for the better preparation. So that you hear this as a whole. It's a legato of two measures instead of, because every time you give up the singing tone of one note, you're basically breaking the melody into smaller pieces. And the other important thing to do is to always think about these kind of octave singing melodies with a lot of weight when we play. Most of the beautiful sound we can create out of this instrument is when we play to the bottom of the keys, the very bottom of the keys. Yeah. The problem with piano is that it's just so easy to make a sound, to produce a sound. Yeah? I guess if you give a trumpet to a 5-year-old, if they can somehow figure out a way to make a sound out of it, it's a pretty successful first day. But for piano, if a cat jumps onto the keyboard, they can make some noise or sound. But for a professional, for a good pianist, we need to really seek the best sound out of this, which is in the very bottom. And the way to do this is to use our arm weight and to have a very slow touch. Yeah? And because of this slow touch, it requires us to prolongate the distance. Yeah? I'm not a piano technician, but I guess I can easily ask a professional piano technician what's the exact distance of the depth of the key. Yeah, I guess it's just this much, yeah, 1 centimeter, or maybe even less than that. If we go straight, if we press the key from right above, it's 1 centimeter. But then if we approach this from the side, yeah, so instead of going from top to the bottom, if we approach the key from the side, then this can be much longer than 1 centimeter. That's why we have to apply a lot of wrists. Yeah? Because I don't play straight, I play to the side. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, I start to prepare the shorter note when I'm holding this long note. So this wrist motion is a constant motion. If you forget everything I talk about today, just remember this. The wrist motion has to be constant. It's constantly moving. First, it's moving in different speed. It depends on the tempo of the piece. It depends on the value of the note. It depends on the rhythm. It has many factors. But then it can be fast moving. It can be slower moving. When it's moving slowly, you're drawing a bigger circle. When you're having a very fast passages, you're drawing a much smaller circle with your wrist, but constantly moving. Okay, and of course, this beautiful second theme is interrupted. It's interrupted by Beethoven. unexpectedly, and of course I've heard of this maybe 1,000 times, but then every time you play, you should be surprised. Huh? Subito piano, and then subito forte, pezzo subando, and then subito piano. So in a very short period of time, you have so many surprises. Yeah. Here, since left hand is having many measures in a row, 4 measures of rest. This F flat, I use the left hand to start, so right hand is not in such a hurry. And this part, often I hear students playing them too fast because it's a very easy scale with one hand only, and of course comparing to what's coming, it's much slower. It's 8th note, it's not 16th note. But two things we have to understand. One is Beethoven wrote a very long legato sign, 4 measures, the longest so far. He wants us to produce deep sound, although it's soft. And also, we need to keep the beat. Yeah. So yes, this it's not as intense as but still we have to have this same perpetual motion, this intensity of the beat inside us. Yeah. So we should play this with a little flatter finger so that the tone can be deeper, and also with a flatter finger it's harder to rush, so we made it physically harder to rush. Yeah, and of course subito again. Everything here is all of a sudden. And this part, it has 48 notes per measure. Yeah, if we count all the hands. But the most important, there are only 8 notes. 10 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how do we emphasize this 10 notes? By using a different part of our hand to produce a different tone color. Yeah, and I call this the turning doorknobs technique. So we use a different muscle group, and then the other repeated note, which is mostly played by thumb, and the thumb is our biggest enemy when we want to produce very soft sound. So how do we do that? We just basically do not give any momentum for the thumb. It just barely touches, and all the momentum is on the upper side. So for this part, we also want to make sure these 5 notes are equal. Right? We don't have because when everything is absolutely even, it has intensity. Yeah, I'm not saying this is Prokofiev, but a lot of the Prokofiev's intensity is coming from this absolute evenness. Yeah, when something is super even, it's almost inhuman, right? Because for normal human expression, we have accents, we have fadeaways. When we speak in English, we have vowels, we have long vowels, short vowels, we have consonant. So you don't pronounce everything exactly the same. But here, for intensity reason, we want to make sure everything is the same. And of course, how do we produce a sound? It solely depends on the different parts of body we use. I will stop here in today's lesson. I think for the next part, most of the materials will be the same, so I hope to finish the first movement within the next couple of videos. See you next week.